From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! We're on the road in San Francisco.
The first article I wrote was in 1939 when I was in fourth grade, and it was about the expansion of fascism over Europe, the kind of a dark cloud that may envelop everything. And as I mentioned before, I have some of those same concerns now. On the other hand, there's been tremendous progress. The country's far more civilized than it was, say, 40 years ago. Thanks to the activism of the 60s and its aftermath.
Noam Chomsky, today the MIT professor and author on the global economic crisis, healthcare, the media, U.S. foreign policy, and resistance to American empire. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. U.S. Navy Special Forces freed an American ship captain Sunday by killing the 3 Somali pirates who were holding him hostage in a lifeboat. The rescue of Richard Phillips ended a 5-day standoff that began when 4 pirates attempted to seize a U.S. ship on Wednesday. The crew escaped harm after the captain offered himself as a hostage. Over the weekend, President Obama authorized the use of force if it appeared the captain's life was in imminent danger, hours before the pirates were shot dead by the Navy SEALs. Admiral Thad Allen of the U.S. Coast Guard appeared on ABC this week and said an international legal framework is needed to address piracy.
I think the real issue is to create an international legal framework where there are consequences for these actions. For the past 6 to 12 months, we in the United States Coast Guard, with our other partners in government, have been working through entities like the International Maritime Organization to gain the U.S. Security Council resolutions that authorize entry into Somalian territorial waters and land to protect world food shipments. What you really have to have is a coordinating mechanism that ultimately brings these pirates to court where they can be held accountable.
A 4th Somali pirate's in U.S. custody after surrendering earlier in the standoff. U.S. officials admitted the killing of the pirates could escalate violence in the region. Somalia pirates are still holding more than a dozen ships and more than 200 hostages. Piracy began in the region after Western ships started dumping toxic waste off the coast of Somalia, devastating the Somali fishing industry. Somali fishermen said they're worried about the increased presence of foreign Navy warships off the coast.
We are very worried about the military activities on our sea by the international coalition who are fighting the Somali pirates. Because sometimes when we go further out to sea, we face very dangerous situations. Because of their fleets on our sea, and since they begin these operations, we catch less fish.
In other news from Somalia, the Washington Post reports President Obama is being urged by some in the Pentagon to carry out strikes inside against camps by the Al-Shabab militant group in southern Somalia. Others in the administration oppose military strikes because there's no evidence the group is planning attacks outside Somalia. The Pakistani newspaper The News is reporting U.S. bombing raids have killed 687 Pakistani civilians since 2006. During that time, U.S. Predator drones carried out 60 strikes inside Pakistan, but reportedly just 10 of the strikes hit their actual targets. Meanwhile, 14 peace activists were arrested Thursday outside Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, where Air Force personnel pilot the unmanned drones being used in Pakistan. The activists were arrested after holding a 10-day vigil to raise awareness of the drone strikes. Among the arrested were Kathy Kelly and Father John Deere. In Iraq, 5 U.S. soldiers were killed in a suicide truck bombing in Mosul Friday. It was the deadliest strike against U.S. forces in Iraq in 13 months. In Afghanistan, a prominent female lawmaker and women's rights activist was shot dead Sunday. Satara Ashkezai was killed outside her home in Kandahar by Taliban gunmen on motorbikes. President Obama has sided with the former Bush administration in claiming prisoners held by U.S. troops overseas have no U.S. legal rights. On Friday, the Justice Department appealed a federal judge's decision granting 3 detainees at the U.S. military prison in Bagram in Afghanistan the right to challenge their detention in U.S. courts. In economic news, federal regulators shut down 2 banks on Friday. Cape Fear Bank in Wilmington, North Carolina, and New Frontier Bank of Greeley, Colorado. 23 banks have collapsed so far this year. Meanwhile, the Wall Street Journal reports the committee overseeing federal banking bailout programs is investigating the lending practices of institutions that receive public funds following a rash of complaints about increases in interest rates and fees. Last week, Bank of America told some customers that interest rates on their credit cards will nearly double to about 14%. The bank's also imposing fees of at least $10 on a wide range of credit card transactions. Citigroup is pushing new loans that carry annual interest rates of 30%, while Wells Fargo is offering its own form of a payday loan that carry annual interest rates of about 120%. Last year, U.S. banks and savings institutions collected nearly $40 billion in deposit account charges and fees for everything from ATM usage to balance transfers. The fees accounted for about 25% of the industry's total revenue. In Thailand, at least 70 anti-government protesters were injured earlier today when troops fired into the air in Bangkok and used tear gas to clear protesters from the streets. Thailand's prime minister declared a state of emergency Saturday after 1,000 protesters stormed a summit of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, known as ASEAN. The summit was canceled and Asian leaders had to be evacuated by helicopter. Most of the protesters are supporters of the former Prime Minister Thaksin Shinawatra, who was ousted in a military coup in 2006. Thaksin still has deep support among the urban and provincial poor due to his policies to help the poor during his time in office. In other news from Asia, Sri Lanka's government's declared a 2-day pause to its offensive against Tamil Tiger rebels. Human Rights Watch estimates 3,000 people have been killed since January as the Sri Lankan military attempts to eliminate the pro-separatist Tamil Tigers. The group accused the military of firing artillery into a designated no-fire zone. In domestic news, President Obama's nominated Larry EchoHawk to lead the Bureau of Indian Affairs. EchoHawk's a member of the Pawnee Nation of Oklahoma and the former Attorney General of Idaho. He'll become the first high-profile Mormon to join the Obama administration's senior ranks. Newsweek is reporting the Obama administration's abandoned plans to restore a federal ban on certain semi-automatic assault guns, despite a recent spate of killings. On Sunday, California Senator Dianne Feinstein told 60 Minutes she plans to hold off trying to renew the ban that she authored in 1994.
There's some sense that the president has so many crisis issues on his plate right now that the idea of bringing up guns, which is considered part of the culture wars, it would be such a diversion.
I agree with you. I wouldn't bring it up now.
So you're going to hold off?
That's correct.
And
I'll pick the time and the place, no question about that.
Senator Feinstein was being interviewed by 60 Minutes' Leslie Stahl. In education news, Clark University in Massachusetts has canceled a scheduled speech by Holocaust scholar Norman Finkelstein after the Jewish campus group Hillel objected to his appearance. Finkelstein's known as one of the most prominent academic critics of Israel's occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. Clark University President John Bassett said Finkelstein's speech on campus, quote, would invite controversy and not dialogue or understanding. Meanwhile, at Central Connecticut State University, the opinion editor at the school's newspaper has been dismissed because she's a member of a socialist club on campus. The paper's editor fired Marissa Blasco last month, citing her anti-war activism and her membership in the Youth for Socialist Action Club. Blasco said, quote, "We shouldn't have to swear off our interest in activism or hide our opposition to a war to work for our campus newspaper." In New York, 19 students at the new school were arrested Friday after police broke up a student occupation calling for the firing of the university president, Bob Kerrey. Student activist Fatuma Imad accused the police of using excessive force.
Police began to violently and brutally attack people that were observing outside, alleging that they were people trying to escape from inside the occupation. And there's footage that can be seen of the police attacking one student and having at least 6 officers around him. He's not resisting arrest.
Video shot at the scene by Brandon Jordan shows police firing pepper spray into a new school building and police officers knocking students to the ground on the sidewalk. The New York Police Department originally denied any pepper spray was used, but reversed their claim after Jordan's video was posted online. And demonstrators protesting the government's handling of the economic crisis were held in over 60 cities Saturday. The protests were organized by the group A New Way Forward. They're calling on the government to nationalize, reorganize, and decentralize the country's banks. You can go to our website at democracynow.org to hear a discussion about this new movement from Friday.